afternoon everyone. So till now we have discussed about different kinds of common diseases that are present in human beings. And then we have studied about immune system. There we have seen innate immunity and acquired immunity. And we have also seen different kinds of immune organs, immune cells, etc. And then we have studied about acquired immunodeficiency syndrome AIDS. And in this class we are going to study about cancer. Cancer. So according to 2024 global stats, around 20 million people got affected with cancer. 20 million new cases were found out in the year 2024. In the same year, around 9 million people got died with cancer. Approximately 1 in 5 individuals develop cancer at any point of their life. This is the reason why we are studying cancer in 12th standard. So in this class we are going to study about cancer, and firstly we will differentiate how cancer cells are different from normal cells, and then we will see the genes which are responsible for this cancer, and then we will see the characteristics of cancer and the types of cancer and the causes of cancer, and finally we will discuss about the diagnosis and treatment of cancer. So let's start with the normal cell. So what happens in normal cell? So normal cell. So they divide. They grow and they divide. And at one point of stage, they stop dividing. They stop dividing. At the stage called contact inhibition. Contact inhibition. And then, when they get older, they die. Also known as programmed cell death, and we can also call it as apoptosis. So normal cells, they divide, and at one point of time they stop dividing. That point is known as contact inhibition. Contact inhibition means when the cells are dividing, at one point of stage the dividing cells come in contact with the neighboring cells. So when they come in contact with the neighboring cells, inhibition of growth occurs, inhibition of division occurs, and this stops the division. And after some time, when the cells get older, they die, and we call it as apoptosis and also known as programmed cell death. This is what happens in normal cell. So if we take a city, some people are born, and some they go to work, and some they retire, and some they die. So everything is in an equilibrium state. Now imagine, there is no death at all. There is no death. The people are not dying. What will happen? The population will increase. The same thing happens with the cancer. So let's see what happens in cancer cell. Cancer cells. So there is a normal cell. Here, their DNA got mutated. DNA mutation occurs. So DNA has some thousands and thousands of genes. So the genes which are affected are related to cell growth, cell cycle, cell division, and cell death. Because of this mutation, they lose control over cell cycle. Now they cannot control the cell cycle. Now they lost the control over the cell cycle, and this leads to uncontrollable proliferation. Means the division is is in an uncontrollable way. The cells are dividing again and again and again. There is no stop for it. And this leads to millions of cells. Formation of millions of cells are formed. And now this leads to formation of tumor. So firstly, the normal cell, their DNA got mutated. So DNA has different kinds of genes. So genes which are mutated are related to cell growth, cell division and cell death. And now, as there is a mutation, they lose the control over the cell cycle. Now they lost the control over the cell cycle. They cannot control the cell cycle. And uncontrollable proliferation occurs. And now they lost the control over the cell cycle. And they cannot control anything. They cannot stop it and they cannot stop the division and the cell death won't happen. And uncontrollable proliferation has occurred. Means uncontrollable division has occurred. And then millions of cells are formed. And this leads to formation of tumor. This is what happens in cancer. So if you compare with this, here the cell is dividing and they stop dividing at one point of stage called contact inhibition. Means when they come in contact with the neighboring cells, they inhibit the division. But this is not happening here. This is not happening in cancer cells. And the next stage is death, programmed cell death. When the cell becomes older, they die. But here it is not happening. This is the reason why they form millions and millions of cells. And this leads to formation of tumor. And now we are talking about the genes. The mutation happened in DNA. So DNA has hundreds and thousands of genes. So the mutation has occurred in the genes which are responsible for cell growth, cell division and cell death. So the gene which is mutated is known as proto-oncogene. This is a normal gene where it can control the cell growth, cell division and cell death. Like we have this thing in our body. And this is the gene which gets mutated. And leads to formation of oncogene. So this is a mutated gene. This is a normal gene and this is a mutated gene. Wait, I will write this. This is a normal gene. This is a normal gene and this is the mutated one. So harmful one. So proto-oncogene is responsible for cell growth, cell division and cell death. We have this thing in our body and this is the gene which gets mutated and leads to formation of oncogene. So this oncogene leads to formation of tumor. And tumors are of two types. Benign tumor and a malignant tumor. So remember one thing, benign tumors are non-cancerous cells. They don't cause any cancer. They are not harmful at all. So these are non-cancerous cells. Non-cancerous cells. And these are localized. Coming to malignant, these are harmful and these are cancerous cells. Cancerous. And these are not localized. These are metastatic. Metastasis. Remember this term metastasis. This is the main difference between benign and malignant. So what happens here is they travel from the primary location to the another location. Means now there is a tumor in lung cancer. Now let's take an example. There is a tumor in lung cancer. So that tumor gets into the blood and travels to liver. And there in liver it forms another tumor. So it travels from primary site to another site. This is known as metastasis. So this is the main difference between benign and malignant tumor. Right? Now let's discuss about the characteristics of cancer. Always remember one thing, proto-oncogene is a normal one and the oncogene is a mutated one. Oncogene is responsible for the cancer and proto-oncogene is responsible for cell growth, cell division and cell death. Characteristics. The first characteristic is no contact inhibition. And the second one is uncontrollable proliferation. And the third one is resisting apoptosis. And the fourth one is, just now we have discussed about it, metastasis. And the fifth one is induced angiogenesis. So these are the characteristics of cancer. These are the characteristics of cancer. The first characteristic is they don't have contact inhibition. Just now we have understood about it. So as they don't have contact inhibition, they cannot stop the division. So that's the reason why they leads to uncontrollable proliferation. Proliferation means division. As they don't have contact inhibition, they leads to uncontrollable proliferation, and this resists the apoptosis. So if you take the normal cell, they at one point of stage, like when they get older, they die. But if we consider cancer cells, they don't die at all. They just grow and grow and grow. That's it. So they resist apoptosis. Apoptosis means death. And metastasis. Just now I have told you about this metastasis. So metastasis means there is a tumor at one stage, at one place, and it travels to another place and it forms another tumor. This is known as metastasis. And induced angiogenesis means formation of blood vessels, new blood vessels. So now there are more number of cells. Now they need oxygen and now they need to transport the excretory parts, excretory waste of everything. So now they need some blood vessels. So they form the induced angiogenesis, means formation of blood vessels. Formation of blood vessels. So these blood vessels are useful in transportation of waste materials and transportation of oxygen and food transportation. So these are the 5 important characteristics, and we can also call them as hallmarks. Hallmarks of cancer, or the defining features of cancer. This might be asked in any way, like they can give a statement and they will tell you to identify which of them will belong to the cancer. So remember all these things: no contact inhibition in cancer, uncontrollable proliferation, and they resist apoptosis, and the metastasis occurs in cancer cells, and induced angiogenesis also occurs in cancer cells. So then we have the agents which are causing cancer. agents that are responsible for those mutations. Responsible for mutation are known as carcinogens. Agents which causes mutations and which leads to cancer are known as carcinogens. So these are basically three types: physical, chemical, and biological. Physical agents are mainly responsible because of radiations. So the radiations are of two types: ionizing radiations and non-ionizing radiations. So ionizing, they can directly alter the DNA, but they non-ionizing radiation, they need some time for the exposure. Coming to ionizing radiations, we have X-rays and gamma rays. And here we have UV rays. So X-rays and gamma rays are ionizing radiations and UV rays are non-ionizing radiations. So they have very high energy. When you get repeatedly exposure to these kind of rays, your DNA might get altered and it might lead to cancer. So that's the reason why we use the sunscreen whenever we go outside. So to protect our skin from these rays. So this leads to, these radiations and all these things leads to formation of skin cancers. Now we have chemicals. Chemical carcinogens. The name itself says that these are because of chemicals that alter the DNA, which leads to the mutations. So chemicals like tobacco, and benzene, and asbestos. When we are exposed to these kind of things, it leads to alter the DNA, and this leads to formation of lung cancer and mouth cancers. So if a person is repeatedly using tobacco, it might lead to lung cancer, and if he is chewing the tobacco, it might lead to mouth cancers. And we have biological. Here we have virus that leads to DNA mutation. And this leads to cancer. So examples of it are human papilloma virus, which leads to cervical cancer. And we have hepatitis B, which leads to liver cancer. So here we are discussing about the agents which are responsible for the cancer. Those agents are known as carcinogens. And here it is divided into physical, chemical and biological. Coming to physical, here we have radiations. So the radiations are two types: ionizing, which are highly energetic, and non-ionizing which are less energetic when compared to the ionizing. Coming to ionizing, here we have X-rays and gamma rays, and here we have UV rays in non-ionizing. So this might alter the DNA which is present on repeated exposure. This might alter the DNA and it leads to formation of skin cancers. And coming to chemical, the name itself says that these are related to some chemicals. So these chemicals on repeated exposure or repeated use of it might lead to formation of lung cancer and mouth cancers. And here we have biological, where a virus will mutate the DNA and it leads to formation of cancer. And examples of it are human papilloma virus, which causes cervical cancer, and hepatitis B, which causes liver cancer. Now let's see the types of cancer. Types of cancer. Types of cancer. This is not mentioned in our NCERT, but it's better to understand this. So I'm not going very deep into this, but I will explain to you outer part of it. And carcinoma, sarcoma, leukemia, and melanoma. And one more we have lymphoma. So the origin and the type of cancers which will be produced by this. So origin of carcinoma is epithelial tissues. Epithelial tissues. So mostly the skin cancers. And the origin for sarcoma is connective tissue. Connective tissue. So connective tissue, we have bone cancers, bone cancer, and cartilage cancers, etc. And here leukemia. The origin of leukemia is bone marrow. Bone marrow. We get red blood cells from our bone marrow. We call it as erythropoiesis. So the cancer which is responsible for bone marrow is blood cancer. And then we have melanoma, melanocytes, skin cancer. Lymphoma, lymphatic tissue, Hodgkin cancer. So carcinoma mainly originates from epithelial tissue and leads to skin cancers. And coming to sarcoma, it leads to connective. The origin of this cancer is connective tissue. Mainly the bone cancers and the cartilage cancers are produced because of this. And leukemia, the main one, it originates from bone marrow, and we call it as blood cancer. Leukemia is blood cancer, and carcinoma is skin cancer or cancers which are related to the epithelial tissues, and sarcoma, connective tissues. And melanoma, which is the origin of melanocytes, leads to skin cancers, and lymphoma, it is the origin of lymphoma is lymphatic tissue, and cancers which are produced by lymphoma are Hodgkin cancer and etc. And these are the types of cancers. Then we have diagnosis finding out whether there is a cancer or not. Treatment means we know that like a cure. So first let's discuss about the diagnosis. So how to find that a person has a cancer or not? The first step is biopsy. Finding out through biopsy. Here what happens is tissue taken out. In biopsy, so if a doctor is suspecting that a person has a cancer at one part, they will take that part tissue and they will examine it under the microscope. This is known as biopsy. The second one is imaging. We have different kinds of imaging techniques like CT scan, computed tomography, and MRI, and radiography. So these are the imaging techniques where we use X-rays and some other magnetic fields to find out whether an organ has a tumor or not. Third one, and that's it for diagnosis. And there is one more thing, antibodies. So a specialized type of antibodies are injected into the body which are specific to those antigens. So these are the techniques which are used to find out whether a person has cancer or not. And now let's see about treatment. The first treatment is radiotherapy. Radiotherapy. Second one is chemotherapy. So radiotherapy means radiations are released on the certain tumor cells. So these radiations kills those cells. It doesn't mean that they will kill the surrounding cells. So surrounding cells will be protected and the only tumor cells will be killed by radiations. And coming to chemotherapy, here we give anti-cancer drugs. And the third one, we have mixed. Here we use surgery plus radiotherapy plus chemotherapy. So this is the most used one for cancers and the most effective one. So here we have radiotherapy where radiations are used to kill the tumor cells, and we have chemotherapy where we use drugs to kill those tumor cells, and here we have the mixed, which is the most used cancer therapy or treatment. Here we use surgery, radiotherapy and chemotherapy. So this is about cancer. In the next class we will discuss about agarose gel electropore.